do they go 5, 4, 3?
Hey, welcome back to It's Complicated. I am back from Parts of unknown. That's exactly what I meant to say. I should have. This is why we rehearse. We never rehearse. To my right in the picture, maybe left on yours, is my good buddy Brandon. Good buddy. This is off to a stellar start. I'm
Wow.
killing it, and I am your faithful co-host, Beef Parfait. I am. And
Maybe.
beefy, big beefy ravioli boy. That's I don't, how you doing today, buddy?
I am doing just well. Just well.
Just
Another
well.
day. Yeah, another day down. Another day down. And another day down.
Wow,
You know,
that's the most nihilistic I've ever heard you, and that's saying something. Like that's, and it's not even nihil. There's like still hopefulness in your tone, but another day down,
that
another
was
Monday.
pessimistically optimistic.
Yes, it was.
How
Yes,
about that?
yep. Yeah, it was. Now, I think when you take your optimism and you marry it with your pessimism, it just becomes realism. And you're right. Another day down and another day down, and I am well. I love that.
Yeah.
I'm just well.
You
You are.
know, that reminds me of the movie Legally Blonde, where the gal asks, you can be overwhelmed and you can be underwhelmed, but can you just be whelmed?
And today we're whelmed. I'm whelmed. I'm
And
perfectly
we
whelmed.
reference Legally Blonde, so any man card that we have is pretty much stricken.
Yeah, um I'm not saying I wouldn't watch it. I've never watched it. But that's okay. I can discuss it because Reese Witherspoon is a national treasure.
100%.
She is a
100%.
blight that stopped aging 15 years ago. She and her daughter look exactly the same, and honestly, I want to get on her skincare regimen because
No kidding.
right now it's just like
Look at these bags.
look, man. I got to take a belt sander to my face once a week just to shave off some bad decisions. So this is as good as it gets right now.
What are we doing here? What are we doing?
What are we doing? We're discussing music, buddy. We're gonna talk about music.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Are you
yeah.
sure you want to? You sure you want to dive there?
I
We dive into
always
the deep end.
like let's. Uh, I'm off the deep end. Watch as I dive in.
All right.
I'm gonna leave the ground. I'm far from the sound now.
You
Yeah,
sound like my buddy from what's the W County Life? The dude from up there in Michigan. Why did I forgot it? I linked it on my Facebook a couple weeks ago when he was trying to sing like Oliver Anthony, and that just reminded me of that.
Dilemma.
Wayne County Life. Wayne
Okay.
County Life.
Wayne
That was
County.
it.
I've been to Wayne County. Yeah, today we're gonna talk music. I want to know things. I want to know what you're thinking. Tell me what's on your mind. See, I can quote all types of music. I love music. Like as much as I love talking about comedy, I love talking about music. Um, so here's
Me
what I want to
too.
know. I want to know. I'll tell you my first.
I wanna know.
Have you ever seen the
We
rain?
could do an entire show just
Oh, dude,
doing that.
Nicole loves it. I can hear two notes of a song and be like, "Oh man, this is time of my life," or "Oh
Yep.
man, this is Ghost to Most by the Drive By Truckers." She's like, "How do you do it?" And I'm like, I listen all the time to music.
Yeah.
So one of the like, I bonded with members of my family through music. Music is great. I know everyone has a. I mean, for God's sakes, you're a musician, a musician. I'm gonna not be able. I've not even drank a full cocktail. Maybe that's the problem. I should chug. I'm
You
musician.
should probably chug,
Yeah,
chug, chug.
yeah. We're not gonna
Go
do
ahead, go.
that. So like my sisters, when they're my older sisters, like are 10 and 12 years older than me. They moved out and left their stereo. behind with records, tapes, and eight
Hell
tracks.
yeah.
The eight tracks that they had gotten from an older cousin, and they left me all this. So that was like the first real gift of, but like I remember the first time I asked for an album, it was Bon Jovi's "Slippery When Wet," because that was when,
Nice.
and I was like 5 or 6. I think I was 6. Um, and so that was like the first like album that I was like, I am conscious of this music. I listened to Cheap Trick on my sister's, stereo, a Dream Police, which is an awesome album. But yeah, that was my first like gifted. And then with my first real money, I went and bought uh White Snake. Um here I go again, because look, I saw Cool Cars and Tawny Katane dancing on them, and I was like,
Hell
oh,
yeah.
I think I figured out the things that I like, and I'm only 7.
Yeah.
I've got a leg up here. So okay, let's start there. Let's talk about your
Funny.
first gifted music and first money music.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that. Perfect. But what I will say to you is I pegged you, I was pretty close. I was going to say your first purchase was going to be Def Leppard. So I think I was in the wheelhouse there.
Yeah.
And I've got to give you kudos because doing the 80s band stuff that we did, one of my favorite songs in the set was we would do Still of the Night, because I think that was just a banger back in the 80s. And
Yes.
that guitar riff and Coverdale, just, man, I loved that song. I
It
loved
is
to
a
perform that song.
killer song.
I There were a handful that I thought I could get through in the 80s stuff, and I felt like I could hold my own. Now, I'll pat myself on the back a little bit. When it came to that stuff, I felt like I did a pretty good job. But for some reason, that song in particular, I felt like I could recreate pretty damn close to the original. So yeah, love that song. So for me, my parents had records in the 80s, right? That's how I consumed music. Wasn't much of a purchase hound in the 80s, but I got into the 90s, and the very first CD that I had purchased was, believe it or not, Joe Diffie, Third Rock from the Sun.
Yes. Hell yes.
Yeah,
One,
yeah.
how can you go wrong with Joe Diffie? Joe Diffie was
That
great.
Rest in peace, man. But that opening guitar riff to Pickup Man that's what did it for me.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know. I don't know why. I guess that's why I gravitated. I love the early '90s country stuff, and this is going to completely I'm going to sound like a hypocrite because I quickly shifted gears after I fell in love with Joe Diffie. Not long after that, maybe a couple years later, the first I think gift of music was in an Easter basket, and this is probably what sent me over the edge. My first gift was a Backstreet Boys CD from my
No,
mother.
no judgment. None at
From
all.
my mother, and I was like, how do I return this? Because is that a thing? Can you do that? Like, I don't want this. I don't want to be seen with this. Uh, I will get made fun of at school for this album.
Even if I hide it in my room
Yeah,
underneath something,
yeah.
someone will know. Someone
If
will
my
know.
friends come over and I try to say this is my sister's, one, they're gonna know I'm lying. Two, I can say it's my parents and they know I'll be lying. They're
Right.
like, what are you really doing with this? Yeah, so that was the first CD that I had that was gifted to me, and I'll never forget it. Never forget it. But
Oh,
right along those lines, I went from like a Joe Diffie, and if you dive into Columbia House, remember the old Columbia House
oh
deal,
yeah.
12 CDs for a penny? And we were not able to be litigated. There were no lawsuits filed against minors when we stole all the CDs. So that kind of opened things up for me. My sister got a handful, and she handed me one. She's like, I don't want this. I don't like it. And it was Korn, self-titled Korn album.
Wow.
And that was a game changer for me. So that was the one that really, really changed. That was life altering for me. So I went down that path. The heavy
That's
metal, the new metal. They're calling it new metal. It wasn't new metal back then. Now it's new metal. So
yeah.
some people don't like that genre, that classification. I don't care.
So it was early junior high for me. My grandma and grandpa were big on going to auctions, yard sales, all that stuff. And my grandpa knew I loved music, but they wanted me to be more into um, country music. And so he figured the way to get me into country music was because I mean I listened to country music with my old man. My old man, you know, I knew country music. George
Yeah.
Strait was, always will be king. He's King
Yeah.
George.
Yep.
But he gave me a bundle of tapes that he had purchased for like $1, and it was Waylon, Willie, Jerry Jeff Walker, Chris Christopherson. It was Johnny Cash. It was all the Outlaws, Hank Jr., who was peripheral on that scene, but
Yeah.
he gave. He's like, he goes, I know you like your rock and roll, which is how he always said it. You're rock and roll. I know you like it, but these guys were more rock and roll than any of those guys in tight pants are now. He's like, so, but I don't want you living life like these guys did. And I'm like, I didn't know what the hell you're talking about, Grandpa, but great. And I listened and I'm like, oh man, I thought Willie was boring, but this is great. And then
Yeah.
there was a one where he did the duet with Ray Charles, Seven Spanish Angels. And oh my gosh, my life opened up. And so, but I felt
Yeah.
like I still had to be cool in junior high, so I was like trying to listen to like the to Def Leppard and things that were
Yeah.
popular, but alone in my room, I was listening to besides alone in my room, I was listening to They Might Be Giants and Outlaw Country. I was which explains so much about my personality, you
Yeah.
know. Um
Oh man.
but
Yeah.
then yeah, high school came along and a teacher I had a girl that her favorite song was Brown Eyed Girl.
Okay.
And I was like, I'm trying to find this. I asked him, I was like, because he was a big music guy. We discussed music all the time. And I was like, can you get me that? And he goes, yeah. He goes, but I'll put together some music I think you're gonna like. And he gave me a mixtape that had it had the Brown Eyed Girl on it. I
Sure.
think it was Van Morrison's
Yep.
Brown Eyed Girl.
Correct.
But then had Porno for Pyros and the Pixies
Right on.
and God, who else? All of these other like alt and punk bands that I in my small town was never going to hear of.
Right.
And
Yeah. Because
that like
unfortunately back then, kids, we didn't have the Spotify's or Pandora's. You
yeah, we
actually had to search and dive into a catalog.
I and where I'm from, we didn't even have a Sam Goody nearby. It was an hour and 20 minutes to get to a Sam Goody. Um, which then I would go and be like, all right, I've got $15 to my name.
Yeah.
I wasn't allowed to buy a Porno for Pyros album, but Pixies. Actually, my dad had a problem with me buying Pixies
Did he?
albums, but
Did it sound too feminine?
yeah, it was a little son, but
Yeah. So the Joe Diffie, I believe, was in like fifth grade, sixth grade for me. Obviously, the Backstreet Boys in that junior high time frame, and then high school was when the floodgates opened up to the heavy metal stuff: Korn, Deftones, Manson, System of a Down, Taproot, Slipknot. That was actually, I think, 99. Did I go to Ozfest in 1999? I think I did, or 2000. Might have been 2000, and I graduated in 2000. So it was right around my senior year. But they used to give tapes out, right? Like you get a free press kit of a tape, and we popped it in, and it was Slipknot. I'm like, where has this been all my life? So we went to Ozfest and saw them on the second stage, which there were 9 guys in Slipknot, and they were jam packed onto a stage.
yeah,
But
they were nearly the size of a ska band.
yeah, but anyway, the cool thing about it was they were still relatively undiscovered, and they wore masks, so nobody knew who the hell they were. So we like as soon as me and my friends heard that stuff, we're like, oh, we're gonna buy the shirts, we're gonna buy everything we can that's Slipknot, and we wore that stuff to Ozfest, and we would have random guys come up and say, hey man, I really like that shirt, and we'd look down and they'd have little passes, and we'd be like, are you in Slipknot? Sure as shit. Like Corey Taylor just walked up to us. Now, obviously, he can't go to the grocery store without somebody
Right.
knowing who he is. But he just walked right up to us and said, I really like your shirt, guys, and sat and bullshit with us and hung out. Same with Joey, the drummer, rest in peace. Chris, the percussionist, like they all kind of just came up to us at random times. That why we thought that was really cool.
But
And then we fast forward to later on in that fall when they do their own tour, and we run into them at Peoria, and they invited us. They remembered us, invited us on their tour bus. So just a really cool experience as a youth into the head. Like that obviously is why I'm so invested in heavy metal, because the artists really seem to care about
yeah.
their constituents.
Well, and the misconception would be, because they're Slipknot and they're with all the masks and stuff, that they would be wretched assholes. They would be. But no, most of
Furthest
the
from the truth.
time, yeah. Like I mean, look at Alice Cooper. I mean, Alice Cooper is
Yeah.
early on, heavy metal, doing the crazy stuff on stage. The sweetest human being. A friend of mine, she was a beer, in her own words, she was a beer wench on a high class golf course in Atlanta,
Yeah.
and Alice Cooper lived down there and would go golfing. And
Great
she,
golfer, by the way.
yeah, yeah. And she said he was the sweetest human being. Would tip her a ridiculous amount of money, um, and but then she'd meet like country stars that were supposed to be down to earth, good old, and that were just like the foulest, meanest human beings that
Yeah.
didn't tip for anything. Um, but sorry, you're talking about Slipknot and Ozfest. I just saw today. It's so weird. I just saw today where Ozzy asked to be in Slipknot, and they,
I saw that too.
yeah, you
He
saw
could be
that
number
too.
10. Yeah. Can I be number
Exactly.
10?
Yeah. Yes, Ozzy, you can be whatever you want. You're Ozzy.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so we're talking about high school. We're talking about stuff. What is Brandon? What's your go-to now? Like when you want to like I don't know. I'm trying to think like the best way because I have different albums, different artists I listen to depending on the mood.
Yeah.
So like
100%.
pre-show pump up, I listen to certain music, and sometimes I'm just like, hey, I want to chill, or I kind of want to be sad. I'm going to listen to this artist. What's your
Yeah.
go-to for things now as a big boy?
I've not strayed too far away from my metal roots, but I'm definitely a lot more open minded. So if I'm getting ready to head to the gym, I'll take a little pre workout or whatever. And when I run into the gym, I'll turn something like there's a band called Beartooth that's been out for a number of years, maybe 10. Maybe they've been on the scene on the high level for 10 years or so. So there's a band called Beartooth that I really love. They just actually collaborated, and I knew I called it a couple of years ago. Caleb Shoma was the songwriter and vocalist for Beartooth. If you ever get a chance to kind of get into that guy, he grew up just like a typical heavy metal kid, where he kind of got made fun of. Life didn't necessarily threw a lot of curveballs at you, and he's saying a lot about that. He's battled addiction, all the things that some people seem to come with heavy metal. He's turned his life around, so a lot of the stuff that he's writing now is a complete 180 from what he used to write. And he just collaborated with Hardy on a song, and I knew it a couple of years ago. I saw them; they posted something together. I'm like, oh, they're going to collaborate, because Hardy, he is a style bender. He's country, but some of the stuff, the new album that he just came out with, The Crow and the Mockingbird. I think The Crow is the album where it's kind of a heavier part of the album, and the Mockingbird kind of is his country stuff. So anyway, you get me talking on music, I'll talk forever. Beartooth radio, I kind of plug it in, and A Day to Remember, huge A Day to Remember fan. And then when I go on a run, I pop on old Tyler Childers radio, and it kind of puts my mind at ease. I kind of zone out. You'll hear Tyler on there. You'll hear Ryan Bingham, big Ryan Bingham fan. Brent Cobb, Southall. They used to be Reed Southall. They're kind of an up and coming band. So if you haven't heard them now, in a year's time, you're going to wonder why you haven't been listening to them. So that's kind of another kind of reach back for me. If I really want to kind of zone out, is a band called Dredge. I don't know why they never really gained mainstream fame, but they're super ambient rock. They were a perfect mix of Tool, Deftones, and that 90s vibe with, if I were to ever take mind-altering drugs like acid or LSD, Dredge would be a great band to pop into the CD player and listen to. So they were a good mesh of all that stuff.
Yeah.
What about you? What about you today?
Sorry, I was fascinated with what you were saying. I got lost for a second. I'm writing band names down. I'm like, well, I'm not familiar with that one. I'm. It's funny. My tastes have merged into hillbillies that play rock and roll. If that makes any sense.
Okay. Yeah.
Like Jason Isbell.
Gotcha. And the 400.
Yes, yeah, that new album is fantastic, but I still go, I still drift into Southeastern. That Jason Isbell's album was just Jason Isbell with like Super 8, because Super 8 Motel is one of my very favorite songs, because it's about a band that they just don't want to die in a Super 8 motel. That's it. That's like the dream, is to not die there. But some of the more serious music, when I'm like, all right, I just want to chill, I just want to kind of get inside myself, picks things apart. But like my go-to to this, I mean, right now I'll listen to it again and again, is Drive By Truckers live album, is live in San Francisco.
Nice.
It's got a combination of everything. The only thing it doesn't have is Daddy's Cup, and that is one of my very favorite songs. It's one of my pump up songs.
Right on.
If anybody hasn't heard it, it's about a guy, son of a race car driver. He's got his dad's name, which I was named after my old man.
Right on.
And his old man gets in a wreck, can't continue racing, so he raises his boy to be a driver, and
cool.
It's a very cool song. But also, to keep myself humble, I listened to Drive By Truckers' Birthday Boy, which is about a stripper / sex worker, which, let's face it, as a traveling comic, half the time I'm just a sex worker. I am. And there's a line in that song, just laying flat underneath a mean old man, just thinking happy thoughts and breathing deep. And some nights, that's all I'm doing, is just thinking happy thoughts and breathing deep. And then there's some nights
that's
where,
fair.
yeah, where it's which one's the birthday boy? I ain't got all night. Let's go. Let's get out there and make that money. But there's truckers, just they've got a song for everything, and I got introduced to him when I was like early 20s.
Okay.
And then just kind of forgot they existed for a handful of years.
Sure.
And then came back around and went, oh, thanks to Pandora and Spotify, and rediscovering Jason Isbell and all that, and being like, oh my gosh, right, I forgot how much I loved these guys, because again, it's rock and roll hillbillies. They are. When a lot of people are like, oh, Drive By Truckers, you play country music, and Patterson Hood's like, no, we play rock and roll, but we got a country accent.
Yeah. I feel like they're in that I don't like to generalize. I really am not. I will respect and accept the genre, but I don't really like to throw people in there. But what I will say is I feel like they kind of fall in. If you think about Whiskey Myers, Cadillac 3, even Childers, some of Childers stuff, it's almost like the circle of life where you think about Skinner, and there's almost a direct connection between what that rock style of country is being pushed out now.
Mm-hmm.
It's really just a recreation of some stuff like Leonard Skinner was back in the 70s, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Those are kind of the roots.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for not to harp on it, but Drive By Truckers has a song called Ronnie and Neil
Yeah,
where they talk about, you know, that rivalry, and then, how they butt heads. But, it's obvious where that Skinner is a big influence on them, but also Neil Young is a big influence on them, and it's just they strike a really great balance. So does, I mean, Jason Isbell.
yeah.
But then, yeah, um, Tyler Childers, what we were talking about. There's a fella that why I'm blanking. My wife's gonna yell. She's gonna watch this and yell at me for not remembering his name. I feel really bad. Um, but he's a solo artist that we just happened to. He was playing a Sunday afternoon at a local bar, and we went in to just have a Sunday fun day, and
Sure.
listen to him. And I follow him on all social media. It'll hit me. Um,
He's
but
local to
he's
Springfield, or you guys were
no,
just
no,
okay,
he's
gotten
from
big now.
Michigan. I'm not gonna. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's just about to release a new album, but yeah, really
nice.
talented dude. But yeah, I love that. But then, like, I I I know somebody's gonna make fun of me. Rediscovered my love for, like, ska music, because
Nothing wrong with that.
dude, I love a heavy guitar with a trumpet backing it up. That's give me heavy rock and roll drums with a trombone coming in over top of it. I just like to see band geeks making rock and roll music. I think it's great.
Yeah, heck yeah. Yeah, the evolution, I guess, is really what I was trying to say. That's really what people are. There's some marketing. There's some push for bands, for artists like Cody Jinks, like we talked about Whiskey Myers, but they don't get the same level of marketing push that someone like a Morgan Wallen does. And I love Morgan Wallen, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Big, I'm a big Morgan Wallen fan, but I see the connection and what fans and why they love people like Isbell, Drive By Truckers, Cadillac 3, Whiskey Myers, South Hall. Like, that is reincarnation of Skinner in
Hmm.
essence.
Yeah.
Uh, Maybe minus some of the more intricate guitar work. I don't know that many of those, it may be a little more diluted when it comes to solos. There's some stuff on there, but it's no Freebird.
Hmm. It's hard to match Freebird.
Yeah, yeah. I still listen to, I stick to my roots though. Like I said, I still listen to, like, Stained for me back in the day was a big band. Cold Chamber. I was a closet Limp Bizkit fan. I still take issue with Fred Durst. I think that guy's kind of a dick.
Frederick
Uh,
Durst and the
yeah,
Biscuits.
just because you were treated poorly growing up doesn't mean you've got to flip the script and treat everybody else poorly. He, at Louder Than Life big music festival this past weekend, 2 weekends ago, my wife and son went on Saturday, and Avenged Sevenfold headline, and I can't believe it ever brought them up, but Avenged Sevenfold and Pantera both headlined. The day before, Limp Bizkit was one of the main acts, and Fred Durst. There are thousands, tens of thousands of people out, and it's a sea of people. And Fred Durst basically said, if you don't turn the huge jumbotrons off, we aren't going to perform. And I thought that was a dick move. Uh,
That's a real dick move. I mean, especially for people
what?
up in the nosebleeds.
Yeah.
I
Well,
can't
it
imagine. I
means
mean, I'm sorry, Fred Durst. Even Tom Petty left the jumbotrons on, but Tom
yeah,
was. I mean, Sorry, that's another go-to.
Sure.
You, uh, man, anything Tom, what album? Yes, all of them. A greatest hits, sure. But Wildflowers, hit me. All of
Yeah.
them. We've got like an original Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, like their debut album. We found one. It's not in great shape. It's not worth like. No, we're not holding on to resell. That's mine.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. I mean, dragging my heart around with Stevie Nicks.
Yeah.
Also,
So much good music out there. Yeah.
oh, can just a moment? Can we just the Stevie Nicks from the 1970s? Even Stevie Nicks now. I don't care. Stevie Nicks, just that voice. But Stevie Nicks from the 1970s, oof, ta. I
Yeah.
anyway,
They actually
sorry.
could have changed the line in Step Brothers. It shouldn't be Fergie and Jesus. It should be Stevie and Jesus.
I believe you're right.
That should be the
Absolutely.
appropriate mixture.
Yes. Yeah. Stevie. I
So
would,
anyway,
if I could time travel, I'd go back and be. That was what I would use it for, is to go back and knife fight whatever roadie was blowing cocaine up her beehole, just so I could be in line to do it.
oh yeah. So Limp Bizkit. Speak.
Oh yeah,
uh, I won't say much more on that. I love their album $3 Bill, y'all. I enjoyed Significant Other. I think that was the album after $3 Bill, y'all.
I mean, I'm
But
not gonna lie.
anyway,
At the time it came out, I was the demographic. I was an angry, you know,
yeah,
I was an angry white kid, that had an angry white dude yelling, "Hey, it's okay. Give me something to break."
I want to
And
break stuff. Yeah, I want to.
yeah,
I feel that way.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. I love this.
yeah,
And anyone around our age that goes, I never liked any dude. It's like, I didn't like Limp Bizkit. You are a liar.
yep.
You wore your hat backwards because Fred did. You had
And
stovepipe shorts.
you never considered buying a red hat until he came out with the red hat.
Yeah, yeah. So
I got a
let's.
fun one. Speaking of, like I said, we can jump down the rabbit hole here, and then we can kind of come back to. But first, let's say first major concert, because I was the scene kid. Like I would even go to. We had a really solid. I grew up in a very small town, but Danville, Illinois, wasn't too far away, and we had a very solid punk rock scene in Danville. And my buddy now, Chris Peralt, would put on shows at VFWs. So we would go and we would see, like, Avenged Sevenfold actually played. It was either the Legion or the VFW as they were touring, kind of crazy. But yeah,
That's
Avenged
awesome.
Sevenfold played in a little bitty space in Danville many, many moons ago. But he would book punk rock, and I don't consider that a main, like a large show, because they weren't Avenged Sevenfold that we know as of now. So
Sure.
anyway, your first major concert, mine was Korn and Rob Zombie. And before I hand it over to you, a funny story. My sister took me to that. She was living in Indianapolis at the time, and we had to drive all the way up to Fort Wayne to go to the show. I was 16, I think. Yeah, I think I was 16. We drive up to Fort Wayne. I'm trying to think of who opened. Maybe Videodrone. Nobody knows who they are. Or maybe it was Mindless Self-Indulgence. I don't know. Anyway, that's a crazy band, by the way. We get there. Opening band plays. Rob Zombie comes out, plays his first song or two, and then he says something about 10,000 Maniacs. And my sister looks at me, her mouth drops, and she says, "Oh my God, 10,000 Maniacs is playing tonight."
Oh.
And I was like, I hate to break it to you, sis, but I don't think Natalie Merchant fits the bill tonight. I think he's just talking about us. We are the 10,000
Yeah.
Maniacs, honey.
Although I would
Yeah.
love to see that. I would love to see that.
I will never forget that for as long as I live. My
Oh, that's
sister really
beautiful.
thought 10,000 Maniacs was going to be there.
That's
Because the night belongs to us.
and now Natalie Merchant, everybody. What?
Yeah.
There was a
We
riot
decided to
at
forego
the Rob
Corn. Yeah.
Zombie concert. Oh,
Yeah. So anyway, it was Corn or Rob Zombie for me.
that's okay. Oh man, this is gonna. for some people it's going to be like yes, and some people it's going to be like this is lame. You're lame. My first major concert was Badlands, Tesla, and Great
Ooh.
White.
All right.
So Tesla opened for Badlands was the first act, then Tesla, and then Great White. Because again, that video made me go, okay, I think I like this band.
Yeah.
Turns out, we went to the concert. I went with my dad and his girlfriend at the time. His girlfriend at the time was a cop. My dad was a fugitive retrieval agent. Um, I he watched a dude try to sell me drugs.
Oh wow.
Now we go to this concert. My dad is a cowboy. Like we were, I mean, ranch horses, rodeo, we competed at rodeos.
Yeah.
Cowboy. He's at Great White with his great big black Stetson and his western shirt, and I'm just like trying to blend in
Uh-huh.
as and I'm like 11. I think I was 10 or 11. So I wanted to. So he took me, and I'm just like jeans and Converse and a black T-shirt, and he sees this and he goes, "Did that guy?" And he looks at his girlfriend and goes, "Give me your gun." And now he knew the cops because he had been working, as fugitive retrieval, so he knew the
Yeah.
cops. He tucks the gun, and this is the point where I'm just like, I could care less about the concert. I'm going to watch my old man do something cool.
Yeah.
And so his girlfriend at the time had had her backup weapon. She's like, "Shouldn't I be the one to go do this?" And he's like, "Nope, stay with the boy." And that was
That's
I
great.
watched this. I watched my dad wave at the stadies that were there. And of course, they all knew, and we'd talked to him for a little while.
Sure.
And they come up, and he's pointing, and this guy just takes off at a dead run for the first porta potty he can get to. I
Oh yeah.
watched my dad run up, grab the door of the porta potty, and just rip it off. Didn't could have ripped it open. He's strong, but no, he grabbed because he's huge. My dad's huge. He grabs the top of the porta potty and the top of the door and just rips it open like a can of sardines.
That's awesome.
And this dude turns and he's like holding the baggie and dad goes, I'd stop, son. And he just goes,
Yeah.
all right. And he hands it out. Cop takes it. He just turns around, puts his hands behind his back. And my dad's just holding this porta potty door and turns around and looks at me. Yeah. And the cops were like, well, and I'm running behind. I'm like, I'm going to watch this. And his girlfriend's like, you have to stay away. And I'm like, I don't have to do anything. You're not the boss of me. You're just a girlfriend. You're not even a stepmother. I don't have to listen to you. And so I'm running up.
Story.
And he turns around and he looks at me and he goes, you know what? I could go for a cheeseburger. Are you done with this concert? Yes, sir. I am all done. Let's go get a cheeseburger. And we were close. I don't remember where we were, but there was a Fuddruckers nearby. So I got to go.
Oh, love me some Fuddruckers.
Got to go to Fuddruckers, get a good cheeseburger. I was like, nah, I don't like this kind of music. No, but the second big concert I went to was Alabama. So,
that is awesome.
That was a little bit more our speed at that time.
If you're going to play in Texas, you got to have a fiddle in the band.
Got to have a fiddle in the band. But Decatur had a really good punk scene when I was starting to get really into punk. And they would, I don't know if they were supposed to be all ages shows, but they sure were. And I mean, I was 19 and most of everyone was for the most part pretty cool. And I wore glasses at the time and I didn't know any better. I'm showing up in, Hanes t-shirt, but my big belt buckle.
Yeah.
And blue jeans and my cowboy boots. But I loved punk. And I got into and I loved getting in the pit and this dude just he obviously just took umbrage with my dress. And he decked me and I just sucker punched me and everyone was like, And even the band saw it and they're like, what the man?
Yeah.
And this great big punk, like, and this dude, I'm talking like at the time he was probably like early 50s, but like shaved head, tattoos on his head, piercings everywhere.
Yeah.
uh Comes up, helps me up, hands me my glasses, and he goes, he goes, I used to wear mine out in the pit, learned better, put them in your
Yeah.
pocket, keep them in a case. Nope. He goes, you okay, kid? And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. And he turns and he goes, you, I told you once, if I tell you again, I'm gonna kill you. Now beat it. And the guy just goes, okay. And he walks out and he just I don't know if this guy was in charge, but he just turns and he goes, all right, let's get it back at it. And the band just starts playing, and
That's
then
awesome.
immediately the pits just right back into it. And
Uh-huh.
and I'm bleeding, but I'm still out there. I'm like, yes, just and it was the most punk rock thing
Heck yeah.
that I could have imagined. It was great. It was so fun.
I think some of the most iconic bands from Central Illinois in that punk scene, I'm going to say it and you're going to be like, yep. And you probably would say it at the same time, is Nihilate.
Oh yeah, yeah. You know,
Springfield. Springfield, that's their home turf.
I
And the
tell you,
Pimps. I think they used to be called the Goodyear Pimps. They were from Peoria. I think so.
cheese pizza. Cheese pizza was they were from a Peoria area, I think,
Okay.
and they were God, they were fun. And about halfway through the first set, they would just go into an instrumental, and then the lead singer would come out in like a sundress and combat boots, and and that was the thing. It was he was a he, and everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, he's wearing a
Yeah.
dress! How punk rock!" And they um, like to finish their first set, they did a cover of "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." Um, and it went in a
Okay.
punk style. But with what they would do, and we ended up, me and my buddies kind of ended up knowing them from going to concerts and seeing them. They would they'd bring a bottle of Jack Daniels on stage, and they would just pass it through the band and then through. If we were, they would pick a group, but usually if we were there, it was us,
Yeah.
and we would just, and they'd keep playing until that bottle was gone. But the rule was the bottle has to be gone by the time they were done playing that song.
Oh.
And so there was a lot of blurry nights.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to drive home. No, we're going to drive you in the van. What's wrong with you?
Man, I don't feel sorry for our youth today. It's the wrong way to put it, but the way that we took in music and the way that, when I was 16, I was going to live, small, hole in the wall VFW Legion concerts, and that was my weekend. They don't like, there's not really I don't know if Springfield's any different, but there's not really a music scene for the teen kids anymore.
No.
It's crazy. Like I wish to God that some of my kids were like, "Hey, Dad, I'm going to the rock show." I'm like, "What rock show? Here's a flyer." I'm like, "Oh, they are still doing it, but they're not."
Uh,
It's unfortunate, and
Dumb
maybe one
Records.
day that'll be revived, but I don't know.
Dumb Records does their best to bring live all ages punk shows and punk and alt shows to
Yeah,
to Springfield, and they do a great. I've taken my kids to a few. Brian Galecki is one of the best dudes on the planet. Back when they were on the east side of town, they had this separate venue, the Black Sheep. That was,
yep,
and we did some stand up shows there, and oh my gosh, they were a blast. They were just a blast to do, because sometimes you'd have like 5 people, and sometimes you'd have 50,
yeah,
and just like any punk show. Um, and so when they moved downtown, and we took the kids. Like, I'm like, oh, Bottom Brackets playing, and that was my buddy BJ at the time he was playing drums for him, and Mario and those guys. And so we would go see BJ would be like, "Hey, are you coming out? We've got you on the list." bring the kids.
Power move.
Yeah, and oh yeah, it felt cool because I'd walk in and Brian's like, "Go on," and give us the go sign, and the kids would be like, "Oh, Dad's so cool!" And now
Yeah.
they know I just know. My daughter sent me her love language is sending TikToks and Instagram reels, and she's like, she's like, when you're out with your dad and he knows everybody, and it was just
Yeah.
some clip of, oh hey man, hey, oh how's it going, hey what's up, and just this guy knowing everybody. I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, I do though. But that's the thing, especially when you're doing when you're part of the I hesitate to use the term, but the arts scene,
Sure.
you kind of end up knowing everybody that plays or does something. It's and
Absolutely.
it's kind of cool, but
I played Springfield a number of times, but way back when, I don't know, do you remember, is it 6th Street? I can't remember what road you come in on. If you're coming in on, and 72 turns into this road.
yeah, it's yeah.
Okay. So Veely's Planet was right there. And we would play there
Yep.
often, back in the day, back in the scene days. And that dude, like, it was a hole in the wall style bar that I loved, but the entire stage below it was lined with subs. So we would always, any chance we got to play, I'd be like, yeah, I want to play there. That place is awesome.
That's yeah.
Veely's Planet.
I remember that place. There's a lot of places that just don't exist anymore. I mean, by the nature of
Yeah.
business, which is a bummer because some of these places you're like, oh, or there's places that close down that you're like, oh man, I didn't realize they closed. When did they close? Or
Right.
oh, that's a Bergner's now. What? How did that happen? I had there was someplace in, I don't even remember what it is. I think it's like a Family Dollar or a Dollar General now in Decatur. That I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, that's where I did my first fistful of mystery pills. I don't. That's a bummer. Although if you hang out in a Dollar General long enough in that part of Decatur, you will be given a fistful of mystery pills.
That's fair.
Hold on to these or take them. The cops is coming. Oh, what? What's happening?
Yeah.
Am I going
So
to chase dragons out of the toilet again?
Shifting back to kind of our, like, our preferences when it comes to music, maybe the last thing that I'd like to talk about before we announce our next and final comedian in the series is every decade since the 50s has had iconic bands or musicians. In the 60s, you have your Elvis, Ray Charles, Hendrix, Marvin Gaye, Beatles. I mean, you can name a laundry list. 70s, Zeppelin, Aerosmith, who's still trying to do it. Steven Tyler had to cancel their tour. He ruptured his. He did some pretty good damage to his throat. But Zeppelin, Aerosmith, Skinner, Doobies, Boston. You had that that rock, and then you go into your 80s, Motley Crue, GNR, Poison, the hair movement, right? And you shifted because everybody got tired of it. You shifted to the grunge with Nirvana, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, and then halfway through, that's where my bread and butter was the Korn, Rob Zombie, Pantera, which Pantera was kind of 80s too, but they totally shifted their style in the 90s. Or at least that's when they kind of gained that notoriety. And then you get past the 90s, and I have a hard time thinking about who those iconic bands are outside of the Foo Fighters, that on that scale are iconic. I have a hard time pinpointing iconic bands from the 2000s and beyond,
I'm with
especially
you. Foo Fighters
2010,
is the
2020.
only ones that come to mind for me. Now, here's a great time for our viewers / listeners to put in the comments who they think, so that we can argue with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or have a friendly discourse. But yeah,
Sure.
I'm with you. It's after the 2000s. I mean, my first thought was maybe Ben Folds, or like Ben Folds 5, but Bare Naked Ladies held on for a little while.
Yeah.
However, the new Bare Naked Ladies album, pretty right on.
Yeah.
But
when it
like,
comes to that like,
oh yeah, when you say the
Yeah.
name,
Right.
and they're like, oh yeah, they just put out an album here. They just put out, Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think Foo Fighters is the only one that really has that oomph, that
Yeah, I'm
the
a big
staying power.
Shinedown fan, but I don't know that I don't know that that's. I mean, I would consider them, but I don't think. I mean, if you think about the band Shinedown, and I love them to death, and then you say Led Zeppelin or the Beatles,
Right.
you know,
Yeah,
um, I guess Taylor Swift right now. I'm not a Swiftie. She is apparently very iconic.
she is. Beyonce. Beyonce would be a good example because she came
Yep,
along with Destiny's Child, but has out. So Beyonce is a good example. Maybe Eminem.
sure.
Um,
So the style shifts
yeah,
largely. I feel
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah,
I think I mean, if we're looking for Foo Fighters are who keeps rock and roll alive right now. I mean, plain and simple, they're
at
a
the
big
highest
name.
level.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
But for staying power, for people that are popular, for people that, I mean, look at, not for nothing, Pink.
yeah,
Because Pink can do she can do rock and pop and
sure.
ballads, and I mean, but she's had more staying power than the other. I know they tried to make her a pop princess, she never was,
Yeah,
but she's had more staying power than anybody that she got lumped with. I mean, she sells out arenas all the time.
right.
I think she's almost on par with Cher at this point. Dolly
That's
Parton.
fair. Oh,
Dolly's, I mean, Dolly's just, what I love is that when they tried to induct Dolly into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, she's like, "You can't. I've never made a rock album." All right, but now I'm gonna make a rock album, and she made a rock album, and then went, "Okay, now you can induct me." And I'm
it's
like,
funny.
Dolly, you just we lost Betty White. You got to just keep holding on for us, Dolly. This is
Yeah,
she's because once we lose her, we've got like Dave Grohl, um, and I'm trying to think of who else is in the pantheon of decency. Uh, it just
yeah,
it's a lot of pressure to hold on to the strings of creation, but
yeah.
once
I
Dolly
do
goes, like,
agree.
Dave's in charge.
Yeah, there's and I love that. I love that. A world with Dave Grohl in charge is a fine world indeed, if you ask
Indeed,
me.
indeed.
So yeah, the shift, total shift, right? I know in talking about the decades, Ray Charles is Ray Charles, but he was still kind of rock, infused. But maybe that model shifted because people wanted a change, a change of pace. So our icons are, where rap didn't necessarily get its due yet in the 80s and the 90s, Sugar Hill Gang, and then you have NWA, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Wu Tang, great artists in the 90s. Were they iconic yet? Did they get the respect that they deserved
Right,
yet? And
right.
maybe that was the shift in the 2000s, of where we're like, okay, you've got plenty of rock icons for decades and decades. It's time to put those folks that are owed their due on the pedestal. So I can
Absolutely.
see that.
Yeah.
I could definitely see that to where it shifted, and more so now. I don't know if we're talking about the 2020s. Maybe it's too early to think about icons for the 2020s, but just a struggle to really think of on the rock scale, I guess, for me.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I can't come up with anybody. I mean, again, Foo Fighters is just they keep rock and roll alive.
Yeah,
Real rock and roll. Even though, Medicine at Midnight was more of a disco album. And they did that on purpose. They just wanted to make a disco album, but
yeah,
the new album, is back to the getting more back to the rock and roll roots, and you know, uh, Concrete and Gold, and everything recently has just been, it's just been amazing. And that was I got to take my daughter to her first rock concert, and it was Foo Fighters because
nice.
she loves. Foo Fighters on the level that I do.
That's awesome, man. My youngest is that way. So when he and my wife were trying to decide which day they would go to Louder Than Life, because I didn't think he was going to make it all 4 days, and the Foo Fighters opened up, or they closed the show on Thursday, I think. So I sat and had a conversation with him, and I said, Foo Fighters or Avenged Sevenfold, the best bang for your buck is Avenged Sevenfold Day, because it's got this laundry list of all these bands. You know, Foo Fighters has Weezer, I think 311 played, and I just don't think maybe you would appreciate that music yet. So
Yeah,
we agreed that he would go on the Avenged Sevenfold Day, and when I get back, he and I would go, because he's a huge Foo Fighters fan. He listened to the Storyteller, the book by Dave Grohl. You know,
yeah,
so he has invested in the Foo Fighters a lot. First song he learned to play on guitar, Everlong. So, you
perfect.
know, I said, how about when I get back, we'll find a Foo Fighters show, and you and I will go together, and we'll do a little bonding. He's like, okay, yeah. So
That's
right
awesome.
there with you, Foo
That's
Fighters.
awesome.
That could definitely be a family band.
Yeah,
You know, generations and generations can enjoy it.
absolutely. Yeah, and so far so good. I mean,
Yeah. Well, man, I think again we could probably talk for another hour on
we could.
music,
Yeah,
but maybe it's time to introduce a new and our final comic in our upcoming Busch Light Comedy Series.
absolutely.
What you
You want
got?
me you want me to, you want me, do I get to say it this time? Do I
What
get
you
to say
got?
it? It's Shane Torres. Shane Torres. If you guys aren't familiar with Shane Torres, you probably know him. You just don't realize it. Shane is a comedian.com is his website. But Shane got huge when he went on Conan and did his what the hell did Guy Fieri ever do to anybody?
Yeah,
And probably did more for Guy Fieri. Well, at the time it was Guy Fieri, but now we've
yeah,
all learned it's Guy Fieri. But he probably did more, as much for Guy Fieri's career as he did for his own career. And then it was right around that time he released Shane Torres Established 1981. If you look right here, you'll see that poster, because Shane and I have worked together a couple times, and he is a delight on and off stage. That guy is just a he's awesome.
a true
If you
sweetheart.
He really is. He's really a great dude. But also, if you're a Burt Kreischer fan, Shane is one of Kreischer's preferred uh,
Yeah,
party guys. He takes him. He has been on tour with Kreischer for 3 years. Has been, and
it's
now
crazy.
he's starting the Tops Off tour. And so he's also, so if you that's not enough, download Shane Torres Established 1981. Shane's also got a new special that's going to be coming out here soon. I don't know the title yet because it hasn't been, like, the title has not been released. But keep an eye out for that, and it's going to be good. If you also check him out on Instagram, he posts a lot of his jokes, and sometimes it's just a lot of him working the crowd. Sometimes it's just him working himself over.
Yeah,
And he does self-deprecating humor really, really well.
yeah,
Humble and funny, funny, funny. So again, if look, regardless of what you think of Burt Kreischer, if he's choosing him to hang out um, for 3 years for multiple world
yeah.
tours, and trusts him to open up in front of stadiums of people,
Right.
you're gonna love him. So make sure to get some tickets. And God, I heard really good stuff about the feature act for Shane. Do we know who the feature act is gonna? What was his name? Uh,
Was it Larry Reed?
Larry Reed. Uncle Lair is gonna. Oh no, no, wait, that's not right. That's not quite right. Hold on.
I don't even think it's that guy's name's Larry. Is it? Is it Joe or John Reed? I
No,
don't know.
well, there's John Reep and Larry Reeb. There's Uncle Lair.
Okay, so I was right.
Yeah,
Okay,
you were right.
okay, but
Also,
that's not who it is.
no, it's gonna be oh, little baby meat pie, your buddy Beef Parfait.
Beef Parfait is the feature.
Yep,
You're
I'll
featuring, right?
be. What's that?
You're featuring that show, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Heck yeah.
Featuring for Mr. Torres. So I'm very thrilled to get to hang out with my buddy Shane, and yeah, it's going to be a good time. We're going to have a lot of fun that night. So
Tons of fun. I sit and I think about this, and I get it. You have somebody on the music side. I know we talk about Morgan Wallen occasionally, but you have somebody open up like Ian Munsick, who lives out in Wyoming. You have him open up for Morgan Wallen stadiums, 30,000 people, outdoor venues, sold out. This is a similar situation where this guy is opening up for Bert Kreischer in front of tens of thousands of people, and now he's going to be in a very intimate room telling a very similar, set of jokes
mhm.
uh, that he did on that same tour. So just understanding, I think maybe the capacity. It's definitely still kind of surreal for me.
The biggest room that I've ever played was 300. I had 300 people, and that even to this point, I'm like, that's a lot of people. I
Yeah.
can't imagine 30,000 or 50,000. It just boggles my mind.
Can
It's a
you
complete.
imagine a simultaneous laugh and
Uh,
how that roars?
what I was told by my buddy John Means, aka Dr. Gonzo, who is a legend in comedy. He played a lot of stadiums. Opened up, speaking of music, opened up for Huey Lewis for years. Opened
Right
up
on.
for Jefferson Airplane and Jefferson Starship.
Jefferson Starship, Airplane, Jefferson Airplane. Yeah.
Opened up for the Dead a few times. You name it, he was. Oh, the San Francisco Comedy Festival opened up for his buddy Robin Williams. I don't know if anybody knows that name. Anyway, so John, he's like, when you play a stadium, he goes, when you're doing a club, you do a joke, you don't hear a laugh, you try to get another joke in. He's like, with a stadium, you have to hit the joke and then just wait and then let the wave come back.
That's
And
cool.
I was like that. He goes, because it takes time for that sound to get to the back row, and then the laugh waves back at you. And he said that first time when you really time it right, he said it's like the first time being in the ocean and a wave coming over you. He said
Yeah.
it's the most intoxicating moment. And I think if it was me, Shane seems to handle it well. I would pee my pants. I think once that moment happens, I'd just be. Maybe it's just because I really need to go to the bathroom right now, Brandon. But that's what's on my mind. But yeah, Shane Torres will be here. Check him out. Check out his clips on YouTube. Again, you're gonna be like, I think I know this guy. Yep, you know
Yeah.
him. And some of you are gonna be like, yes, I know Shane. Why are you acting like I shouldn't? Because some people don't have taste. So congratulations on having good taste in comedy.
So what I'll say is, as we're doing these podcasts, I've alluded to it several times. Scheduling is a challenge. So, we're spread between I can't remember where they just were. They were on the East Coast, I believe, in the Eastern time zone yesterday. He was flying out, and now he's over in San Jose. So as we're recording this podcast, I send the link out and they wait to pop up in a queue, and I get an email from Shane and he says, I dropped the ball here. I had my time zones mixed up, which is fair.
Yeah.
We sent out a time zone in Central. I always try to put in caps which time zone, but that doesn't really always mean anything because these guys travel so much. And I'm
Hmm.
still trying to wrap my head around, me being 8 hours away from Central time zone, right? So we will splice him in. It's just not going to be today. So we will have Shane on this show, and hopefully it still gets released on Sunday. If not, I'll make some adjustments. But we're going to get Shane on here, and we'll talk to him a little bit about coming to Three Ravens in Monticello. Talk about his tour with Bert, and all the things. It's just not going to be this evening. And I say this out loud, and you guys would be none the wiser, other than maybe our shirts changing if we spliced him in. But it's full transparency. We're doing the best we can to get everybody on the same page. Sometimes, like I said, Shane is a road dog. He was on the East Coast, now he's on the West Coast, and sometimes we get confused. So,
like I tell everybody, Brandon, we're just two Midwesterners doing our Midwesterners.
I like that.
Daddy said he's gonna wet my ass if he ever catches me smoking that grass.